Hello everybody, this is City Scrapper. Thanks so much for joining me today. I have a layout for you that was made using the January My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. So I had an idea of making pockets on the page. So I cut out a circle and then I cut out a little bit larger than a half circle, and now I'm just making some cuts into the side of the circle, which you can see I cut a little bit larger because I wanted to bend those pieces of paper around the circle. So at first I cut close to that line that I drew, and now I'm cutting all the way up to the line because if I don't do that, it seems like it's going to turn out kind of messy. So I cut those slits, and now I'm bending the half circle around the full circle. And this isn't something I've done before. I'm just trying to figure it out as I go along. So I'm erasing the pencil line that I drew, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that piece of paper in half and use a plain white piece of paper, that's a circle, and I'm using the pattern paper just on the top so that way I can stretch that pattern paper a little bit further. Now I'm putting some adhesive on the back of the circle, and I'm pressing those little tabs down to make the little pocket. So it turned out to be pretty easy to do this. I'm going to stitch the pocket in a few minutes, and I actually stitched the other pocket because the footage of stitching this pocket didn't come out great, but I do first show you that I punch holes straight across the front of the pocket part as well, and I use a ruler for this, and I stitch all the way around the circle, the top and all the way around the bottom. And I wanted to use a particular stitch that I had in mind, but I didn't know how to make it. So my daughter helped me, and I'm going to show you in a few minutes. It's something I've never done before, but it's a stitch that's easy to do. I think I went a little too close to the edge on some of these with some of the holes that I punched, but it turned out fine. If you ever punch a hole in paper that's too close to the edge or that gets ripped, I recommend that you take a piece of paper and glue it behind the paper that ripped, and then glue it on and let the glue dry for a long time, and then re-punch it. And I found that that works. So for the stitching, which you'll see here, I go in through the front to make a regular stitch, and then before I put in the next stitch, I come back through that stitch, that same stitch, with the embroidery floss. So I go in through the front, out through the back, and then the needle goes through the stitch and from the back, and then you pull it tight. I hope that you can see that. Now I'm creating a border for the outside of the layout, and I use this technique a lot. It's very versatile. You can use it for a lot of different looks. Here I'm just taking some half-inch pieces of paper that are usually leftovers from papers that I've cut for other parts of the layout or for other layouts. And I'm just putting some ATG tape down along this piece of paper, and I'm attaching them down and then trimming them. I make 2 of these strips, and I cut both of them in half, which gives me 4 pieces of paper, and I'm using them to make a frame around the outside of the paper. And you'll see in a few moments when you can see the layout that I glued down the 2 solid pieces where the corners were not cut, and then I attached these 2 with the angles on top, and it makes a frame around the outside. To create some contrast between the border strips and the background, I'm using some Tim Holtz Distress Oxide inks in 2 different colors, Forest Moss and Picked Raspberry. I'm mixing them together to make a kind of a colorful dark pink color or brownish color. I ink around pretty much everything on the layout that's paper using this combination of colors and a dauber at some point. I don't show all of it because it was time consuming to go around all of them, and I don't think that's something that you have to see every piece of. So just to let you know. Now before I assemble everything, I'm using some mixed media, some white modeling paste and white stencil paste mixed together to make sure that the modeling paste is a pure white. And I'm not going to use any other mixed media on the background. I'm just going to use the modeling paste. The stencil was included in the January kit. It's a Vicky Bouton stencil. And I like the way this adds a little bit of texture to the background. And, you know, it's just not a white piece of cardstock. There's something a little interesting to it, but the colors aren't going to detract from all the other colors that are in the layout. So I just go around with the stencil and add it in a couple of areas. I'm not trying to cover the whole background, just certain spots. They're adding a little bit more to the top. I want a little bit to go off the page. And then I do dry that with my heat tool. These two frames were in the kit. One of them was from the ephemera pack and another one was fussy cut from one of the papers. And they had those little pieces missing from them. And I decided I didn't want to go with that look. I wanted to add a piece of paper back in. Most of it gets covered up by the embellishments, but I just wanted to make it a complete rectangle. And then I go ahead and I ink the edges to make it look like one unit. These pictures are of my older daughter. They were from when she was in college, and her roommate got a cat while they were roommates named Moscato. And my daughter spent a lot of time with Moscato and loves him very much. So I wanted to make sure that that was documented for her. I'm putting some heavy cardstock on the back of the photos, and that way they won't be flimsy. And especially when you're putting foam on the back and lifting them up, I feel like you don't want them to be too flimsy. Sometimes the pictures can get bent or kind of creased, especially when you put them in the album. And now I'm just popping them up using some pieces of fun foam. And just, you can see I'm using some scraps there. And there are those pockets. And I'm sorry that I didn't show them when they were all finished. I think they came out pretty good. The corners where the pocket meets the edges on either side, you know, they didn't come great. I'm not really experienced with this kind of stitching, but that's okay because I go back in and I add some little tiny bows over the corners, and that hides any of the inaccuracies or flaws with my stitching. So now I add some stitched hearts, and I fussy cut those from a piece of paper that was in the kit, and I stitched around them. And I'm just taking a bunch of the chipboard and ephemera and fussy cut pieces and arranging them in these pockets. And I love the idea of using pockets on scrapbook layouts. I saw these pockets on Instagram. Somebody had made them for a non-scrapbooking purpose. And I have used pockets in the past, usually some not very decorative pockets for storing memorabilia. But I thought these pockets would be cute for showcasing ephemera, but they could also be used for holding a little mini book or for just some extra photos that you had that you just wanted to include in your album. It's an idea that I definitely want to use again. In the pockets on this page, I'm using, like I said, mainly ephemera and some fussy cut pieces and some chipboard. And I just put a tag into that top pocket. I don't end up using the tag, but pretty much everything else ends up on the layout. I also want to include some of these beautiful Prima flowers that came in the kit. And I end up just using 4 flowers and fussing around with them for a while. And now is when I go around and I use my dauber to ink the edges of all of the paper that's on this layout. So I don't show you all of that because it's repetitive, but it does add some nice contrast between the elements on the page and the white background. So my title says, "A Day Spent With You is My Favorite Day," and that was fussy cut from one of the papers. I don't know if it was fussy cut, but it was cut from one of the papers. And I'm popping the title up on some fun foam, and I do the same thing to the hearts on the bottom because I want those elements to be more prominent on the page. I'm just piecing together some extra pieces that I had in my stash. And I find that the ATG adhesive holds items down pretty well that have the fun foam on the back of them. And here I am popping up those hearts. I don't pop up all the hearts. I just put the fun foam on the back of 2 of the hearts, and then the one that sits in the center is popped up because it's sitting on the other hearts, but I don't put extra foam on that one. In a moment, I'm going to be adding a little piece of chipboard, and it says, "All things grow with love." And I just attach that right down to that center heart. And then I go around and I glue everything down. Now I wanted to add a little something extra to these flowers. They're absolutely beautiful, but I wanted to make them a little more sparkly. So I dipped them in some heavy duty matte gel medium, and I'm dipping them into diamond dust. And this just gives them a whole lot of sparkle. And once the gel medium dries, you just see the diamond dust. So there's areas that look kind of white when I first make them, when you first see them on the page, but those areas go away as the medium dries. So sometimes I'll do this to inexpensive flowers, and it really makes a big difference in them. These are already have beautiful centers, and they're made with such beautiful materials. So now I'm going around with some florals. I have heat embossed them with rose gold embossing powder. And there's 2 different types. I use the same florals over and over again. I find that they just add a great touch, and they're just a really good investment. They were really inexpensive to buy these dies, and I use them again and again. So I'm just playing around with a couple of different ones. I have that leaf one that has the 3 leaves on a stem, but I cut some of them so that there's 2 of them. And then there's that spray of buds, it looks like, and then there's that one long stem that has the like hollow leaves on the top right hand side right now. I'm also adding some flowers. I had used these on a couple of layouts. I punched them out using a Martha Stewart punch. I inked the edges the same way that I inked everything else, and I stuck a self-adhesive pearl in the middle, and I thought that added a nice touch. And I also put those little flowers on the corners, and that completes the layout, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Take a look at the My Creative Scrapbook kits that are available this month. They're absolutely beautiful, as always. I hope if you like this video, you'll give it a thumbs up, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much to all of my current subscribers. I will see everybody again soon, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.